maple syrup. There are a lot of ways to get from this to this, but no matter how you collect it or how you prepare it, the final product is oh so sweet. There is just nothing that compares to real, pure maple syrup. It's now February in Maine, right after Valentine's Day as I film this video. It's the perfect time to get maple trees tapped because once we have daytime temperatures go above freezing and nighttime temps dipping below freezing, that sap will be flowing. Fair warning, I've actually never tapped maple trees before. This is our very first year creating maple syrup here at Wicked Prepared, but I can assure you, I've done a ton of research, watched YouTube videos non-stop, and read countless articles about it. Now there's no substitute for hands-on experience, but you gotta start somewhere, right? And my goal in this video is to show you folks how it goes, what works, what doesn't work, and take all of that research and thinking I did and boil it down and put it into just a few minutes here so you can get right out there and tap your own trees. Now if you're not already a subscriber, how about clicking that subscribe button and the notification bell? Maybe even give this video a thumbs up. It really helps us out, it helps our channel grow, and helps us share all of our ideas and experience with all of you folks. For starters, the science behind maple syrup is fascinating. I won't bore you with too many of the details, but having a basic knowledge of how the maple tree lives will definitely help us understand what we're doing when we tap the maple tree. In essence, during the summer months, carbohydrates are left behind and stored inside the maple tree as the roots pull water and nutrients from the ground and evaporate from leaf surfaces. When the cool temperatures of fall arrive, these carbohydrates are converted into starches and remain locked within the tree throughout winter, until late winter and early spring arrive. As the weather starts to turn warm, the starches trapped inside are hydrolyzed into sucrose. That's where the sweetness comes from. The tree always has more sugar stored within than it needs for growth and survival, so we are not hurting the tree at all. Many studies have been done throughout the centuries, and all have concluded that tapping a maple tree, as long as you're doing it correctly, will have no ill effects on the tree. But why does it come dripping out like that? Well, during the nights when temps drop below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, negative pressure is formed within the tree, which draws water up through the roots. During the day when the warmth returns, a positive pressure is created, which means that any crack, crevice, or hole in the tree will be an outlet for this water along with the stored sucrose. By using this science to our advantage, we are able to create an exit point for the sugary water to escape the tree, which we can then use to collect and boil down the sap. When first exiting the tree, there is a lot of water compared to the amount of sugar. That's why we boil away most of the water content and are left with pure, thick, sweet syrup. Sounds easy, right? Well, I'm about to find out, and I'm bringing you along to find out with me. So before we get started, the most important thing to do is I gotta identify the maple trees on my property, and I gotta make sure I have at least one, because it's pretty hard to get maple syrup from an oak tree. The easiest method is to spot the leaves before they fall, and mark the tree so you remember in the spring. If it is winter and there are no leaves left on the tree, you can still identify your maple tree by the bark, branches, and buds. I found the easiest way was to narrow it down by the branches. Maple trees have opposite branches, not alternate. And the buds look like this. This is one of several red maples we have on our property. We also have a few sugar maples. Remember, you can tap any maple tree. The sugar maple just has the highest concentration of sugar. The tree needs to be at least 10 inches in diameter to tap. If it is larger than 20 inches across, you're able to insert 2 taps, and trees that are over 2 feet can handle up to 3. Now the fun part, gathering supplies. If you've watched any of our other videos on Wicked Prepared, you know we love to get, well, prepared. Luckily, there isn't too much you need to get started with tapping maple trees. As I said at the beginning, there are a lot of different ways to go about collection. The method you choose is a matter of personal preference, and some may find one method easier over another. I'll be using a variety of methods this year, just to test them out and see which I like best. Be sure to stick around for the end of this video, where I'll give you my recommendation on which method works best for us. Okay, so the first method I'll be using is the simplest and probably the most traditional. A bucket hanging from a tap, or a spile, as it's called. These come made from metal or plastic, have an integrated hook to hang the collection bucket on, and typically have some sort of an attachment for cover. A cover is important for keeping a majority of the contaminants out of your syrup, as well as keeping rain and snow out that will further dilute your sap. I'm using these plastic buckets, come with the plastic cover and the spile, and I'll put the link to these in the description below. The second method of collection is actually something I didn't even know existed. It uses the same type of spile to be tapped into the tree, but instead of a bucket, you use this heavy plastic bag which is attached to a metal frame. I like the looks of this because it can easily be taken from the hook and tipped over, making collecting the sap very easy. Again, the links to this setup can be found right in the description. You may find similar things at your local hardware store or small farms that may sell tapping supplies. But if you want to just buy online, follow those links and it'll bring you right to these exact same products that we're using. The final method I'll be trying is slightly different. It consists of inserting this tap into the tree, then attaching a piece of rubber tubing that's specifically made for sap collection. The hose runs down the side of the tree to a bucket resting on the ground. I'll be using these food-grade 5-gallon buckets, which I just drilled a hole in the lid to insert the hose through. But with this method, really any clean, food-safe container could be used, such as washed-out milk jugs, water jugs, or even soda bottles. I was hesitant to invest in this method only because I'm afraid of the bucket tipping over or getting swept away by the river behind our house. It often floods in the spring, so that's something I gotta keep in mind. But I'm hoping somehow to tie the bucket to the tree if the bucket ends up in a spot that looks dangerous. Or possibly I could set a weight on top or a rock just to prevent any mishaps. Now there is one other method that is used, and it's mostly by commercial maple syrup producers, which is to use the taps with the tubing connected, but then to connect the tubes from multiple trees and plumb them all together. Most of the time they'll run these lines all into a pump house and hook them to a vacuum pump, but you can also do it with gravity feed. Obviously this eliminates the chore of going around and collecting the sap from each individual tree, making commercial extraction much easier and quicker. Now typically this method is reserved for those with over 500 taps, but it does seem like a fun project just to make things a little more automated, even in your own backyard. So maybe someday I'll give it a try. So once you've decided which method you'll be using to collect your sap, it's time to head out to the trees. Now we've got quite a bit of snow on the ground right now, so I picked up these snowshoes online, and this will make things a lot easier for the next month or two. I used to snowshoe all the time as a kid, so now I've got a good excuse to get out and do it again, and still be working and doing something productive. Okay, so we're at our tree now, and the first step is to drill the hole. Now at Wicked Prepared, we're doing our best to have an off-grid backup for every modern convenience that we have. Because, let's be clear, in the event of an emergency, and if the grid goes down, I am not going to go without maple syrup. But today, since the grid is still up at the time I'm making this video, I'll be using this cordless drill. But if batteries could not be charged, we had no electricity, and we're in a grid down situation, I could easily swap out to a hand-powered drill, or a carpenter's brace as it's called, and get the job done with that. There's this really cool store called Layman's I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And they're online. They have so many different tools, gear, all kinds of stuff that's oriented around not having electricity. So there's a lot of hand-powered stuff, as you can imagine. And they do sell these. And we picked one up just to have in case of emergency. Now, most of the time, metal taps will take a 7/16 inch drill bit, while the plastic taps take a 5/16. It's not always that way, so be sure to measure the tap before you drill the hole. Alright, so no matter what type of tap or what size tap you'll be using, what you'll want to do first is take your drill bit and your drill and drill into the tree at a slight upward angle, at a comfortable working height for you, which is typically 3 or 4 feet off the ground. Now remember, if you're standing on top of 4 feet of snow, that tap will end up being 7 or 8 feet off the ground when the snow melts. And then you'll be dragging a ladder around to collect your sap. Nobody wants to do that, so make sure you take that into account. Now, like I said, we've got a river that runs by the backyard in our house, and that does flood in the spring sometimes, so that's another thing I have to take into consideration. Use a good, sharp, clean drill bit and drill 2 inches into the tree if you're using a larger tap, and about 1.5 inches if you're using a smaller one. I wrap tape around my drill bit as a spacer, leaving the proper distance at the end. It makes it a lot easier than just eyeballing it. Once the hole is drilled, you insert the tap into the tree and seat it lightly with a hammer. With a rubber mallet, it's a lot less likely to damage the tap, and as you tap it into the tree, you can hear the sound change as it seats into the wood. Now attach the bucket and cover, or connect the rubber tube and place it in the bucket. Now all we do is wait. On average, each tap will produce roughly 10 gallons of sap per year, which equals out to about 1 quart of syrup. Now that might not sound like a lot, but if you can tap multiple trees and have multiple taps in larger trees, it does add up in a hurry. I'll be checking my bags and buckets every evening and pouring them into 5-gallon buckets to store and keep until I have time to boil. It's recommended not to leave the sap sitting around, but if sealed in containers and stored at cool temperatures, most people say you can keep the sap for about a week to 10 days. The longer it sits, the more chance it will go sour, so it's best to boil it down as soon as possible. Now on these trees here, I'm using the blue bags with the brackets. So same thing, you drill the hole, and you want to make sure you're drilling and putting your collection on the south side of the tree, the south-facing side that gets the most sun and the most warmth during the day. That way, if you have cold temperatures, the sun will help warm it up and thaw it out. You just take the bracket apart, take the band, put the bag through the band, and you want to have the bag sticking out about 3 or 4 inches, and then you simply fold it over, pull the bag snug, slide it into the bracket, being careful not to rip it, tug down on it a little bit to get it to seat into the grooves. And you're all set. The thing that amazes me the most about maple syrup extraction and production is that it really hasn't changed that much since it was first discovered. I suppose because at its core, it's a pretty simple process. We actually don't know when or how maple syrup was first discovered, but it definitely was by the Native Americans that first occupied the northern US and Canada. Perhaps they witnessed sap flowing from a broken tree, perhaps from a hole created by a sharp object, or possibly they first found it flowing from a natural crack in the bark. However it happened, they quickly realized they could create a hole and collect the liquid. Legend has it they would cut a V through the bark and then insert a wedge at the bottom. This created a trough for the sap to run down and eventually collect. One trick they found that is not widely known is a shortcut to the water-sugar separation. When collected sap is allowed to freeze overnight, the water containing no sugar freezes first. This chunk of ice can then be removed the following morning, greatly reducing the amount of water that needs to be boiled away to leave syrup behind. My next video hopefully will be a part 2 in this series, where I'll be boiling the sap down and packing it away. If you haven't already, I'm hoping you'll consider subscribing to our channel and clicking the notification bell. That way you'll get an alert when my next video comes out. I'm pretty excited to see how this goes, and I can't wait to share it with all our friends on YouTube. Okay, so you've made it here to the end of the video, so now I'm going to let you know which sap collection I think is best. But here it is. Each method definitely has pros and cons. The bucket hanging from the spile is simple and should last year after year. The downside is they can be expensive for your first year, but if you don't have many trees, it might not be a big deal. The bags that hang on the tree are fairly inexpensive and take up a lot less room to store in the off-season. The downside is the bags, although made from heavy-duty plastic, could be damaged probably easier than a bucket, and may not last from year to year. They're also harder to handle when the sap is frozen. So that leaves the bucket on the ground with the rubber tubing method. To me, this way of collecting sap may be the best of both worlds. It's fairly cost-effective, pretty durable, and should offer years of collecting after the initial investment, and it's simple to set up. But my most favorite part is when you have a situation with multiple trees in one clump, or have a large tree that can handle multiple taps. You only need one bucket. This dramatically reduces the cost and the amount of time spent collecting sap. As long as you check the bucket often enough, which it seems like once a day is sufficient, this method works very well and will most likely be my choice going forward. Be sure to let us know what you think down in the comments. If you've collected sap before, how did you do it? How did it go? If you've never done it before, you should definitely give it a shot. I'm having a blast so far and can't wait to show you all the rest of the process. And I especially can't wait to try that sweet syrup drizzled all over some big, fluffy, homemade pancakes, or poured all over a big bowl of vanilla ice cream. God, I can't wait! Make sure to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and share this video with your friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll check back in on our channel often to see how our syrup turns out, how the garden grows this year, as well as to see all of our creations and ideas to help keep our family prepared and self-sufficient. Don't be a stranger, and if you have any questions or thoughts, please make sure to leave a comment below. We love hearing from you guys, and we reply as often as quickly as we can. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see ya.